Hey, welcome to the Lovelda Show, Women of Power podcast. I'm your host, Lovelda Vincenzi, and this is the show where women share their personal power tools, which I define as the tools, techniques, or strategies which have enabled their success in life and business. I ask all of my guests to be real, raw, honest, authentic, and vulnerable, dare I say. So this is a girl chat show like no other, where we really do dive into what it is to be a powerful woman, the real tools behind a woman's success. Now, if you're on this channel, do hit that subscribe button right now and hit the bell to make sure that you're notified when new shows are added. You can also subscribe to find us on Instagram, which is at Lovelda Show. You'll find all links that have been shared in the show in the show notes. And right now we're going to hop straight over whilst I do a audio introduction before we jump into the full show. So let's get started. Hey, chicas! Welcome to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast, the show where women share their personal power tools, the techniques, strategies, and ways of being which have enabled their success in life and business. I'm your host, Lovelda Vincenzi, an international MC and host and female speaking business coach on a mission to unleash authentic, powerful female voices onto the world. This is a girl chat show like no other, as all my guests get real, raw, and authentic whilst sharing pure gold nuggets of wisdom. In today's episode, we'll be uncovering the power tools of Dr. Kathrine McAleese. Dr. Kathrine is a high-performance mindset coach, sociologist, psychotherapist, and DISC personality profile practitioner with entrepreneurial, corporate, and sporting clients worldwide. Founder of Mind to Win and creator of Mental Mastery, she has built a successful business in the entertainment, pet, and coaching industries and is a dynamic keynote speaker whose seminars are in demand internationally. Combining systemic coaching, faith, psychoeducation, and rich self-awareness, Dr. Kathrine's clients come to her to live with bigger vision, bolder faith, and to take braver action. She has been featured in media such as Thrive Global, Richtopia, BBC, BFBS, Clean Run, Agility Voice, Social Bee, and Leadership Voices. Her first book will be published in 2021. Well, I absolutely had to get Dr. Kathrine on this show because she really does have a very unique way in how she looks at life, and in particular, acknowledging in her coaching practice the differences that are inherent in us being different sorts of beings. And so as a result, I really wanted to have a deeper dive into how we acknowledge our differences, or perhaps even acknowledge our disadvantages, but don't use those as a reason for not progressing. And what she shares in this episode, what can I say? It's going to be mind-blowing. Now, before we jump into it though, if you're ready to get paid more for sharing your expertise, please use the link in the show notes to download your free copy of my Speaker Marketing Blueprint. It's your guide to building your speaker marketing assets that match and reflect your expertise such that you can increase your fee regardless of if you're brand new to speaking or if you're ready to level up your speaking career. What you'll also find is that all links shared in the show notes, either by me or special offers that I have or by my guests, you will find in the notes. And at the moment, we have an incredible holiday draw. So to be in with a chance to win, you simply need to share what you're learning on the podcast, tag us, and follow us on Instagram. The best way to follow is to follow the show on Instagram, which is at Lovelda Show. So follow at Lovelda Show and tag us in a comment, and you'll be in with a chance to win a free speaker marketing audit with moi. Oh, and PS, before we dive straight in, to make sure that you never miss an episode of this show, please hit that subscribe button. Or, you know what, just subscribe to the mailing list so that you can get the episodes delivered directly to your inbox and binge all through the festive season. Why not? Well, that's more than enough for me for now, and I really just want to dive straight into this because what Kathrine shares is something that we all need. So enough from me for now. Let's dive into the show. Hey, chicas. Welcome to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. Well, we're back again. And you know what? I've come full-fledged. I've come like whole hog, let's make this happen. So this show is genuinely all about power, stepping into your power and owning your power. But let's face it, the world ain't created equal. We don't all have the same opportunities. We are not all coming from the backgrounds that give us the resources to be able to hit the ground running. And we've spoken about this from different angles this year. You know, I've had different guests on who've spoken about how to be able to approach things when perhaps you did not come from a privileged background. But this guest today, she don't take it to a whole nother level. So I met her on Instagram. And she floored me when we started to have a conversation about the differences that people face. Because you see, particularly in entrepreneurship, there seems to be, when you look at strategies and tools and ways of moving your business forward, those strategies and tools and ways of moving your business forward never account for your background, do they? They never account for whether you have learning disabilities. They never account for if you come from an underprivileged background. They never account for being female and having baggage around what that means in terms of who you have to show up as and all the other, you know, responsibilities that they have. They don't account for that. They just say, take these 15 steps. Not my guest. No. She makes sure that your strategy accounts for you and the background and baggage and cultural upbringing and differences that are just inherent from where you came from, because you are unique and we don't need to fight against it. We just need to acknowledge that sometimes the world just ain't equal. But that's not a freaking excuse. It's not an excuse for not showing up. It's not an excuse for being half of who you are. And so it's a conversation that, let's face it, we need to have. So I need to bring her on board, and we need to have some real talk about the realities that we be facing and how we can maybe navigate theirs a little bit differently so that we can show up just as powerfully as people that we feel like have got a better head start. So please welcome my guest today, Kathrine McAleese.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me, Lovelda.
Girl, people don't know this, right? We met on Instagram through a chance, like we have a mutual friend. It was like a chance, like slide into my DMs moment.
Yeah, it was completely serendipitous because it was, it was random and absolutely fabulous. So.
And I love a bit of slide into the DM action. I just think sometimes you can meet some incredible people. And the first voice note that you, like one of the first ones that you sent me where I was asking you what it is that you do, because I just wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit more. And you started by telling me like you work with, you know, dog owners and dogs. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then you told me I take the same thing and I apply it to entrepreneurs. And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Then we went to voice notes and I was like, oh. So let's just go back there for a moment. So you started working with dog owners and supporting them. Tell us a little bit about that first. And then I'd love to know how that transitioned into working with business owners, because we're not puppies. Although sometimes I think maybe we act like them.
We all like a cookie for a reward, you know what I mean? We all like click and treat, it works. So basically, what happened when I set up the Mind to Win side of what I do, I just returned from the US. I'd done my grad school training as a therapist out there, marriage and family therapist, systemic psychotherapist in UK terms. And I came back and I was watching, my parents have a dog training place and they've had it forever. And there was a dog agility competition going on. And I was watching people that I knew with my little therapist hat on. And I was watching these people that I knew competing, and the same stuff that was mentally getting in their way in the ring, I was going, yeah, this isn't about competition. And so because people in Northern Ireland, for those listening who don't maybe know Northern Ireland, it's not that we don't talk about our problems, it's that we don't even admit we have problems that we might need to talk about. like culturally, the whole time I was training as a therapist in the States, I'm like, no, you don't get it. It's not that we don't talk about our problems. Like, we're not even at a place where it feels safe to admit we have problems, right? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at it going, there is no way in heck I'm getting somebody in to do therapy work. But I wonder if I could take my therapy, training, bring it into more of a coaching vibe, call it For the Dogs, wink, wink. I can help you compete better, because I knew I could.
Yeah.
I wonder if they would come to me so they could compete better. And that's literally where my business began, was like a way to go. Y'all need help. You won't get help. How can I help you access that without losing face? That was it. That's where it started. And it went global.
Love that. I love that. And the reason I love it is because I often find that sometimes we can see the problem really clearly, and then we just want to like get the solution and shove it down people's throats. And they're not ready for it. They don't acknowledge it. They can't see it as an issue. It's not something that they're looking to fix, even though by fixing it, they would get the result that they want. Mm-hmm. But to come at it from a perspective that they're like, look, I just want to, I all these other things that you can see the link to. You can see the mental blocks, the programming, the behaviors, the mindset, the belief. You can see all of those things are really what's stopping them from being fabulous. But they're not looking for that. They're not looking for shrink. They're not looking for somebody to get into their head and fix that. They just want to compete better. Yep. And so I love that you had that clarity so early to just say, I'm just going to give you what you want. I'm just going to sell you exactly what you want. You want to compete better. That's great. Yep. Now that we're agreed, that's what you want to do. That thinking, it's the problem. But I'm not going to start by saying your thinking's the problem. So let me sell you the therapy, because we're not open to that. So I just think it's worth pointing that out, because I come across a lot of people who are struggling in business because they can see the problem. Mm-hmm. Really clearly. And then they're angry that the client can't see the problem and won't buy it, because they're not looking to find that solution, darling. That's not what they're after.
That's it. But it also comes back to, and I agree with you. And the other layer I would add to that is that there's a cultural, that from the get-go, that cultural piece, know who you're dealing with, and if you just look at that person as if, and, forgive me, I'm in danger of, fast forward and going off on a rant again, but if you just look at that person as an individual, without reference to everything going on around them, you're gonna miss the mark. You cannot have the impact that you're capable of if you treat that person as if they exist in a bubble, because, spoiler alert, people don't exist in a bubble,
What?
So for me, sorry, I hope you're all sitting down for that one. So the trouble then is that if you are myopic in your gaze, you are not only limiting that person, you're also limiting yourself. So for me, there was a piece of it was like, how do I get these people to get the help they need? And it's like, yeah, I'll talk about mindset, but I'll tell you that, this is about you competing better. But I know in my heart, when you start doing this work, it doesn't just impact that area that you came to me for. Mm-hmm. And that's where, the Dr. Kathrine side of things, the Live Bigger, Bolder, Braver, came into being, because people would come to me to compete better. And what do you know? They would suddenly have the confidence to go start that business, or they'd ask for the raise, they'd get the promotion, they'd, set healthier boundaries and change their relationships. And it was like, duh, that's what happens, because unfortunately we have this idea that somehow we compartmentalize, and, my business is over here and my hobbies are over here and my relationships are over there. Mm-hmm. And, no, you're one person.
Doesn't work like that.
You have one mind, and what's going on in your world, it kind of leaks out, even if you wish that you could just leave your relationship problems in the car when you go to work, right? It don't work like that.
No, it's useful to know as well, because it's like, on the one hand, we want to kind of have these boxes. As you're speaking, I think we've got two conversations here, really. We've got I mean, I love it though, but we have the conversation from a business perspective. Like, I'm a woman in business and I'm looking to niche and I want to get a greater impact. And why am I not connecting with my clients? And then we've also got the conversation of, I'm a woman in business and I'm competing. I've done the air quotes, by the way,
Yes.
ladies, if you're listening in and you're not on our YouTube channel, I've done the air quotes. You're competing against other people in the marketplace and you're not quite getting the action. Or what's happened is you're taking strategy after strategy after strategy after strategy, but you just seem to be getting in the way of that strategy. Like, what can you do? So I kind of want to look at both of those things, because most of the listeners are going to be people who are in business. And so that side of things is going to be quite helpful. And for those who aren't in business, it's still useful to understand, but understanding, well, how do I show up more effectively when I'm taking on different strategies and they're not working? How do I know when it's the right one for me? So from a marketing perspective, because I feel like that's where that's the road we ended up going down. I'm now really curious as to, how does Dr. Kathrine qualify a niche? Like, what do you think niching is? Because it's a thing that every person is talking about. You got to know your niche. And there's this interesting dynamic of, well, should I now be niching on other parameters, perhaps, to understand it, the cultural context, etc. So how do you look at niching now? I'm very curious. Or niching, if you're in the US, niching or niching. Let me be global.
So honestly, full disclosure, I can't say that sort of thing is something I've done with any great, pre-designed desire. I'm very passionate. I trust my gut. I have a really good gut. So I tend to go where the spirit leads. Faith is front and center for me. So God tends to deal with me with a 2x4 to the head. Like, there's nothing subtle about it. I apparently don't pick up subtle hints. So for me, there's usually a 2x4 to the head moment that goes, okay, this feels all right. Okay, I feel like I'm being directed this direction. Let's do that and see if I'm going in the right direction, and wait for the next 2x4. So I can't even, I wouldn't advise other people to do things that way necessarily, but for me, there's people I love working with, and there's people who are going to enjoy working with me. Like I say, I'm a Jesus girl, front and center, and yet it's amazing how many atheists love working with me, and I love that. And we live in a time where often it's so tribal, and it ends up being like, my camp's over here, and if you don't agree with everything that we believe, you outsider, boo, and the other side's like, rah, rah, there be dragons, and we can end up so split with no nuance whatsoever. And it's like, you know what? I'm old enough to remember when we used to be able to really disagree about things and still be good friends, and still work well together, and still be able to honor, what we did take from the relationship, and it wasn't based on some kind of narcissistic, you need to be exactly like me. So I think for me, I go with what lights me up. The doggy thing was accidental, but it had me curious. It was a new direction. Oh, and I am a sucker for pioneering. Yeah, like to do things differently. So there was that piece as well. I will admit that bit. So there was this is something that, it's a dilemma. And I have the skills to do something about it. And I've never been one, if I see a problem and I have a solution for it, I'm not one to sit back and go, oh, like when I was, 21, I set up my first business of my own, which was a dance recruitment agency. At the time, there was none in the world. So it was the first of its kind. And it really came about because there was no such thing as sick leave back then. And I was teaching dance and choreographing and what have you. And one of the ladies I worked for, she'd had a hysterectomy. And 2 weeks later, she was back teaching ballet. And I was like, that's not right. Like, you shouldn't even be driving, let alone jumping around like a lunatic.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bonkers.
Wow.
Like, she was a force of nature. So, but I was like, that's not, no, come on, boys and girls, that's not right. And that literally was where it was like, well, why don't I create an agency? And the amount of people that were like, oh, I thought of doing that. And I'm like, you don't get any points for thinking about it. Never claimed that I was the first person to think about it. I was just the first one to get up off their hoop and do something about it.
Mm-hmm. I think there's freedom in what you said, because sometimes I like, there's sometimes for me, just having somebody say, oh, you can throw out the rule book. Like,
yes.
you don't have to have this full rule book. It can just be, this is who I love working with, and these are the people who genuinely enjoy working with me. So I just want to find more people like that. And occasionally somebody comes into my space who doesn't fit my necessarily typical client avatar, for want of a better word, but there's a resonance there where I'm really excited to work with them. They're really excited to work with me. And so I just trust that. I think there's a lot to be said for, I'm not anti-strategies, by the way.
No.
I have them. I have strategies, I have tools, I love them. But sometimes, actually, for me personally, at least, mine is my intuition. If it feels good, I'm doing it. And if it doesn't, I don't question it. It doesn't matter how good it looks on a sheet of paper. The answer, because anytime I've done something that doesn't feel good, I normally realize later why it didn't feel good. Normally the lesson comes a little bit later and I'm like, shoot, that's why I wasn't supposed to do that. And so it's quite freeing, actually, I think, in some ways, to have somebody say, you know what, I just went on my gut. And for me, that works.
Yeah. And the thing as well is that I'm really passionate about is questioning, not just for the hell of it, but to interrogate the assumptions that we work from, and it's something that I work really hard with my clients on, of like, okay, what are you assuming here? What have you taken for granted? What are the shoulds that you're operating to? What are the templates that you're working to? Do you even like those? You know what I mean? Do they fit your values?
Yeah.
Like if there's a platform that you loathe and detest and their ethics are in the toilet and you really, really don't like their ethics, why would you go give them ad money? Like, why would you do that? Just because some guru tells you to? Stop that. Yeah, engage the brain. Come on, people. And we're just not trained to do that. We're not trained to critical think, which, by the way, I am making sure is in my mastermind because it's so essential. But, we're not taught a lot of the time to think through to what end. I mean, that's one of my favorite questions. Okay, you're going to launch 5 times a year. You hate launching. To what end? What is the point?
Yeah.
I want to get a 7-figure launch. To what end? Why does that matter to you? Who gives a rip?
Yeah.
And at what cost? Because every yes
That's
is a no.
That's a good one. At what cost? So like, we had a quick conversation just before we got on here in terms of questioning things, where I have recently had this like aha moment for myself. So I sit back to the question of launches and how one does launches. I'm gonna be honest, I personally have a love, hate relationship with launches. I am working on it. I play games with it. I play a game with my launch process to kind of go, how can I do this in such a way that I can find something that's authentic to me? And my little like light bulb moment, because it's not even a new light bulb, it's just a bulb that got brighter, shall I say, is I sat down and I thought, my problem with launches is it feels like I'm putting myself in a pressure cooker. I don't operate well in that pressure cooker situation where it's a lot of things that feel like obligation that I need to get done that I'm not excited about doing, and they're all under a time crunch. For me, it doesn't work very well. For some people, they love that process. But for me, the way that launch process has been taught to me, my implementation of them has had it be a pressure cooker situation. And I'm not against the steps. I mean, there are certain phases that need to happen in order to close a sale, right? But it occurred to me, like, it doesn't actually matter what strategy I use. It literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a peep It makes no difference. I make more sales, the more present I am. I make less sales, the less present I am. The more stressed I am, the less present I am. The less stressed I am, the more present I am. It was kind of like, so it really doesn't matter how many emails I send. It doesn't matter what time I send them. It doesn't matter where I use Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or none of them. It doesn't matter what I put on a sales page or if I have a sales page. It doesn't matter if I use a long form page, a short form page, a couple of emails, an Instagram live, a Facebook live, a video. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the version of me that I bring to it. And so that was my kind of personal aha moment, coming back to question those assumptions. And my assumption was, I need to go through all of these steps in this way. And in doing so, that means I must sacrifice 2 weeks of my life to the launch. And I don't like doing that. It's actually what it comes down to. I don't like doing it. It doesn't feel nice to me. I don't enjoy it. It's not cool. So what if I could still have the same process, but not have to sacrifice my life? What would that look like?
Exactly. And I think that that's it, is that, you know, we've been so well trained into following courses and listening to the gurus and all of that. And heck, you know, the marketing's marvelous. And I've bought a very good share of expensive courses and all of that. But the danger is that we never stop and think, and particularly as women, the way that we are socially conditioned growing up, we're not well trained to listen to our own voices. You know, we're often far better acquainted with the skills of being the emotional caretaker of everybody around us, you know, and assuming the responsibility for the emotions and actions of people around us. And so we're often really, really poorly trained at paying attention to who we were created to be and how she would show up, you know, on her own merits.
Yeah.
You know, and we lose a lot of creativity that way, you know, because if we're busy showing up as if we were the male guru, you know, the, you know, that sort of typical archetype, there's a lot of embedded assumptions in that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an awful lot in those shoulds that come with that, you know, with that model, with those strategies, that without nuance, without context, what I've witnessed, you know, and going in there and, you know, laterally then I my PhD was in sociology. So, you know, still very, obviously very systemic, that's my thing. And so, you know, I would be in these courses theoretically as a student and end up sitting back and watching the dynamics in the communities and going, this is hurting you because you feel shame. You feel like you're less than. You feel like there's something deficient in you. And what's worse is that often what I was seeing was this gaslighting and what I would term as spiritual abuse. That if you're not doing well, your mindset just isn't where it needs to be. You know, if you get your mindset right, and then you can manifest the snot out of whatever you want. And I have this little like laminated BS card that I like to, you know, hold up. It's metaphorical, it's not real. But that gets my BS card flying because not everything. I mean, and I teach mindset. I am well versed and actually well qualified to teach it. Thank you very much, which is more than can be said for some of these folks. But not everything can be explained away by mindset, you know.
And there's lots of nuances as well when you talk about mindset.
Yes.
I think it's very easy to kind of take a big brush and just put a big swipe across it and say your mindset. I mean, a friend of mine, actually, she was a guest in season 1, Harriet Whaley Colin, put a post up saying toxic positivity just earlier on today. And so I think when I say there's nuances in mindset, not everything is improved by just being more positive. It's not necessarily a positivity thing that is the answer to it. It's understanding what's going on in your mind and understanding whether or not it is actually serving you or it's harming you. And sometimes being more positive is the answer, but sometimes sitting in the pain is the answer. You know, it's not necessarily let's sweep over this. Actually, sometimes the mindset work is to sit with it and go, why the heck am I avoiding this feeling? What is going on? That it's a feeling that I just continuously reject. What if for once I just sit in it and fully be with it and fully experience it? What am I scared of? And
Absolutely.
sometimes that's the work that takes you to the next level. It's not quite so, I mean, the work is nuanced, and I'm not anti-expensive coach. Yeah, I pay for expensive coaches. They've done me good. I'm not going to sit here and say, don't pay for expensive coaching. But I think that brings us really nicely to the second part where I said, well, you know, there's a marketing side in terms of how you engage, but how do you then recognize whether or not something is the right fit for you and what your needs are?
Okay, so I'm just going to switch back a little second to the previous bit, because you're absolutely right that I 100% agree that there are times that we need to sit in the pain. What I mean when I'm saying it's not always mindset is that structural inequality piece, that piece that actually, when different people's voices are privileged differently, when they're valued differently.
That's true.
You know, so when you've got, even take it, and look, I'm not down on men. We need men, and we need men to step up and be their best selves, like we need women to step up. So I always get a bit about, you know, women who come on and go rah, 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 about men, because like, no, stop that. We've had enough of that. It doesn't work. You know, inequality does not beget equality. So, you know, just because you slap down the other side doesn't really actually help anything.
No, it doesn't make it any better at all. So there's no point. You're just reversing it. It makes no sense.
Exactly. But when you have, you know, a white man with the privilege inherent in that telling you, well, you just need to be as confident as me and put yourself out there, that is ignorant, frankly. And that is speaking from blind privilege, because for a woman saying exactly the same things, having the same, if not more expertise, their word, their presence is not necessarily treated as equally. So you ignoring that or pretending that that doesn't exist is, you know, ignorant or disingenuous. Pick your poison. But either way, it's not flipping helpful.
Yeah, it's not healthy either. It's not the reality of the life that we live in. And that doesn't mean that you should sit back and kind of say, well, my voice is not going to be heard as much, but we need different strategies and techniques that at least acknowledge that you may not get the same level of result immediately from doing exactly the same thing because you're coming from a different position. Or you may need to take this strategy and apply it slightly different, because the environment in which you work in is not going to immediately be like, oh, okay, cool, great. Sharon's spoken up today. We should listen to her. You know, it might not be like that in your world.
No.
And so, yes, having that confidence and navigating the space is important. But I love that distinction of, actually, you have to pay attention to the privileged position in which sometimes these voices are coming from, because they're speaking from their view of the world, and their techniques work very well for people like them. but you may not necessarily get exactly the same results in exactly the same way, because the world does not hear your voice in the same way that the world may necessarily hear their voice. And so you might need to bolster that with slightly different structures and strategies, I suppose.
And even, you know, even beyond the business piece, it's of honoring who you are and what you may have actually overcome. Thank you very much. You know, to get where you are now, and being honored that you are in fact in a different position. It doesn't make the white male a dreadful person. I'm not saying that at all, but acknowledging on both sides, you know, acknowledging that there are currently differences, there are extra hurdles that some people have to go through, get over, that others don't ever see in their way, you know, that are cleared out of their way. And it's that honoring piece, and that you know, I'm obsessed with the context and the nuance and all of that. So you know, that for me is massive. So to go to what you were talking about, asking me about in terms of who do you decide to work with,
Well, how do you, knowing this, knowing that I can see that I might have, let's say, barriers or nuances or different challenges,
Yeah.
how do I then make decisions about what's right for me without that becoming without taking on the shield of being a victim? I can't because, they're privileged and I'm not privileged, because I don't believe in that BS either, to be honest with you. Like that to me, I don't buy. But how do we then evaluate what we need to best support us, and best help us to move forward? Do you have some tips?
For me, I think it's a filter, I think awareness is huge. So it's why I bang this drum so hard and will continue to keep banging it harder and louder for as long as the good Lord spares me, because it's not taught. And I'm sick to death of seeing individualistic nonsense put out there as wisdom. It is so comforting to be selfish and, borderline narcissistic. It can feel so nice to just make everything about me, and I'll just think about me, and I'll, ascend to this super spiritual level that I never have to think about anybody. That's crap. I'm sorry, but that's nonsense. You exist on this world. And if you haven't seen it before this year, look around. What we do affects other people and vice versa. So extract head from derriere anytime you're ready, and let's, start thinking more systemically, right? So for me, the awareness of that you are part of the fabric of eternity, right? I mean, I don't just even look at it in terms of your life. You have been put on this planet at this moment in history. Like, God had a point on putting you here now. There's a reason why humanity needed you to show up at this point in history, not later, not before, now. This is your moment to be part of the thread of the fabric of eternity. And I believe that every single one of us have the opportunity to leave a legacy that long outlasts us. Multi-generational legacy. I'm greedy. I don't just want to, impact in this life. I want an impact long after I'm, feeding the worms. You know what I mean? So for me, that the awareness of that, to think about your life in that way, to think about yourself and the influence that you have, because I exactly the same as you. I have no time for victim thinking. I have a lot of sympathy for people going through stuff. That's different.
Yeah.
But people who are, who choose
using it as a reason for why they can't show up, as to why they, we've had challenges. Everybody's had challenges to varying different degrees, some more than others. And when you're in it, it feels just as bad, right? It doesn't matter how big it was. When you're in it, it feels big.
Yeah.
But it's whether or not that definition of that then becomes, look, I can't because of, I don't buy into that, but I do acknowledge that we don't all come from the same space, and sometimes some people's roots a lot faster than others. But my view is, empowered is when you can see your ability to transform where you are right now, and that transformation will be different things and mean different things for different people. It's not a one size fits all.
Absolutely.
So how then do we look at the gurus that are out there, the support that's out there, the structures? How do we find our best way of navigating those structures with our baggage, our cultural upbringing, our background, our mindset, our history, our whatever it is? How do we navigate that in an empowered space with our baggage, making the choices to attach ourselves to people who are best going to be able to support us? It's a big question, isn't it?
It's a big question. I could take all day on this one. My brain's like, ooh, 20 different ways to answer. I think for me, one of the big things is that no matter what you've been through, you have strengths, and some of us who've been, when you've been through something really horrible, sometimes the very fact that you're still here, it might not feel like a big thing, it might not feel like a good thing, but it testifies to a strength, to something in you, and I love finding the strengths, I call them like the guerrilla, warfare, that, you know, that you don't feel it. Like, it doesn't feel like you're winning. It doesn't feel good necessarily, but your actions show. You know, I used to talk when back when I was doing clinical work a million years ago, and I would have like a suicidal teenage girl to sit with. And I would always ask, you know, why haven't you killed yourself yet? Right? Which sounds the most shocking, dreadful question, but it's not. Because when you unpack it, it goes, look, you feel awful. Your life sucks right now. But you know what? That's not the full story, because there's something in you that has kept you alive. Like, what's that? I'm excited for that bit. What's that? What's that exception? What's that strength? And it's the same for all of us, that, you know, you are unique in the strengths that you hold. You are unique in the stories that you can tell, the places that you can navigate other people through this world. You know, if you are someone, you know, and I don't want to talk about the 7-8 figure end of things, like, because people get caught up in that. And it's like, no. You can influence people in a big bad way. So one example, really small thing. When I moved back from the States, I had a guilty pleasure job. It was the weirdest thing. I worked in it was while I was studying for my PhD. I would sit in this nightclub cloakroom, right, which was actually in the club itself. So, you know, earplugs in, and I'd be reading books from my PhD.
Of course, because that's where you would study.
Of course. Yeah, right. Naturally. You know, it was, I got through so much reading. It was amazing. But I also made a point of seeing the people that came in front of me, you know, and I wanted them to feel seen. So even though I was just doing this, like, you know, minimum wage type of silly little job, it's like, no, these are precious people. You know, in my worldview, every single person is made in the image of God, male and female. That's kind of a big deal to me, right? Life is important. People are important. And there's one girl in particular who stands out, because this one night I said hi and how are you, and I made a point. I always make a point of getting eye contact, which works in this culture. I know in others it doesn't, but in this culture, you know, it's like, and when she actually took eye contact with me, and I was like smiling at her, and, you know, like genuinely waiting to hear how are you, something shifted, and it was like nobody had seen her in so long, and you could see this weight like just lift off her. And it really knocked me for 6, because I was just trying to be nice, but I wasn't expecting something of that gravity. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about, because people get caught up in like the, you know, being an influencer and like having millions in your following. Forget that. There's people around you right now who just need to be seen. And like, you know, I was ranting to you before we came on, or we were both ranting about before we came on, you know, that we have this opportunity to be that to each other, even while we want to market, you know, to genuinely show up, genuinely give a monkeys about the real life person at the other end of the messages, you know. So I've not probably answered your question at all, but for me, the strengths piece is such a huge bit that, you know, we can get so lost in our baggage and, you know, what we don't have, and we're not very good yet. I'm working on it, at connecting the dots and going, yeah, but what can I do? What have I survived? What have I come through? You know, what strengths do I have in other areas of my life that I can bring to this current situation? And for me, connecting the dots is so powerful and so helpful in lowering an unhelpful shame as well, you know.
Do you know what? There's so much to be said for focusing on what you do have. So I can't remember the episode number, but Sean Young, mother, homeless for 7 years, runs multiple very successful businesses. And so we had this conversation, and she was like, look, when I needed to raise money, I just started teaching pole dancing classes in my flat, like my council flat. It's not as, and I didn't have the money to do the place up. So I just did up the places people could see. And I think often, I mean, it's a beautiful point there in terms of how do you select people. I almost want to say, look, if looking at them has you feel shame about a certain part of who you are, they're probably not the right fit for you. And if looking at them inspires you to become more of who you are, they probably are the right fit for you. If you're doing it to hide from some version of who you are, or who, you know, you want to get away from something, it's probably not right for you. Because we all know there's certain people where it's like, I'm just inspired. Like being around them gives me energy. It makes me excited. They make me want to be a better human. And there's other people where you find yourself going, but I can't do it like them. Like there's this shame. Shame's the right word, right? There's like a shame trigger that goes off. If that's happening, you need, that's not your person. No, boo-boo. That's not, they ain't for you. Yeah. There's somebody else who's out there. It doesn't matter how many millions they made or didn't make. It doesn't matter how big their strategy is. It doesn't matter that their strategy has worked for millions. It ain't going to work for you if what they bring up in you is a sense of shame or a sense, and the sense of shame could be making you feel bad for being where you're at, or making you feel or igniting a feeling that you aren't able to connect with their approach because their approach requires A, B, C, and D. If they can't meet you where you are right now, then they're not for you right now. It's kind of, I think that's a really beautiful thing to remember in terms of that we have that ability to do that connection for ourselves, and knowing what we have and what's available to us right now, and connecting with people who can support us where we are with what we've got, that has us feel like we have hope and gives us ways in which to move forward. That's your person. And they don't need to have a big old title. They don't need to have 6 gazillion figures. They're just sent to help support you where you are right now to get you to the next level. And they could be for a season, a reason, or a lifetime, girl.
Yep.
You know, you just got to roll with it.
Yep.
Mamma mia. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you this next question, because there's so much in that. I mean, we could be here for days, deconstructing, reconstructing, getting political and unpolitical and all of these sorts of things. But honestly, I think a lot of these things are boiled down to a few simple principles. And when we can just honor those principles of, you know, listening to our gut, as you said, like, you know, being able to hear that and freeing yourself from it having to be exactly as somebody else says. Absolutely. And acknowledging whether or not it brings up, does it inspire, or does it trigger something in me that has me feel less than? And if it's triggering something that has you feel less than, they're probably not your person. So I'm now curious then, given that we both work in this space of empowerment and not being a victim, but acknowledging that we ain't all on we've had different journeys to get to where we are today, from different backgrounds and different sets of resources, right? And none of them are better or worse than the other. We're different. That's the beauty of life. What is it then that you think makes a woman powerful? What do you believe is the essence of a woman's power?
So, I mean, like I said, for me, I do firmly believe that women are made in God's image just as much as any man. And for me, when we are being who God created us to be, like you were dreamt up in joy, designed with purpose, you know, and this is why I believe that God loves you and craves relationship with you and put you down at this point in history, you know, because there's something that you can do in your uniqueness. I do believe that when you are being that person, you know, when you are fully showing up as God intended you to, oh my gosh, you're unstoppable. You know, there's a fierceness, there's a pace, there's a wildness, let me tell you, that comes when you are rolling with God. Like, it is not for the faint-hearted. You know, when you are being that person, it won't be conventional. It won't be boilerplate or template or whatever, you know, whatever plate you want to call it. It won't be one of those. You know, it'll be spinning off in some different direction.
But it'll be exciting and it'll be vibrant and people are going to be drawn to it because it's different.
And because it fits you.
Yeah.
You know, because it fits who you were created to be. Like the things that I teach and, you know, I can wax lyrical on, it's, you know, that bore the pants off some people because they weren't created to be me. They weren't created to do what I do. You know, yeah. There's some people who in the faith space or not, you know, would hate working with the people that I'm like, I love these people. Like, you know, great, happy days. You know, we're all different, and that's a good thing. So when we come into the business world, we, you know, this is my sort of exhortation is, who did God put you here to be? You know, find her, be her, you know, and spoiler alert, it isn't just a step by step by step. the same as every other damn coach out there, or, you know, businesswoman out there. It just isn't, because they're already out there. They're out there being them. You know, I think it's Oscar Wilde said, you know, be yourself, everyone else is taken. You know, he had a point. You know, he had a point. So I think that piece for me, and I would say that is particularly, it just takes things to a whole different level.
Oh, I love it. Kathrine, you know, this has been a theme of this season. Be you, do you. I must have said that about 50 times. People be hammering it home this season, folks. Apparently that's what we need to hear. Be you, do you, because everybody else be taken. So, Kathrine, I need to know. Need to know. And I ask all of my guests this, and especially somebody who focuses on all of the intricacies that make us who we are, so that we can up-level that. What are your power tools? And by that I mean, like, if we were to literally take everything that you've done in life and business and just boil it down to 3 cool things, and you were to say, Lovelda, this is it. This is really me. This is me in a box, right? Like, if you had to box me up and just take the essence of me and what allows me to be me, it'd be these 3 things. What would they be? I'm curious.
Okay. So it might be a little unusual, but they really are. You know, I don't make sense without these things, literally and metaphorically. So for me, the first is, like, I need time with God. Like, you know, I need to, I'm not perfect at it, let's be fair. But for me, you know, being able to bounce things upstairs that are way above my pay grade, right? And so I get to do the stuff that I was put here to do, but I really believe we were never intended to do this alone. You know, I really genuinely believe that when we partner with God, things are a lot more peaceful. They might not always go right, but things are so much more peaceful. So for me, that's huge. And water is a big thing in my world. So for me, my best downtime with God is generally by water. And I'll give you one wee story. So I was, you know, running a million miles, and I'm a great one for stand back, God, I've got it all under control. You know, I'm not very good at this, you know, really letting go and letting God, you know, like, yeah, it's a great theory, but, you know, stand back, I've got it all under control. And so I was, you know, flipping myself out, you know, really stressing about my PhD actually. And I was up the north coast of Northern Ireland, which is gorgeous, beautiful coastline. And I love a good rock pull, right? So if I'm, you know, if I need to just decompress, like, you know, going in, like picking up little rocks and seeing what's underneath and putting them back and everything, that just is a childhood memory and still brings me joy. So this one day I was there, and in my head, I'm still like ranting to God and like, and this needs done, and that's not right. And I don't know how this gets sorted, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going a million miles in my head, like just ranting at God, like, you know, complete hot mess. And I was looking in this little rock pool, and it was almost like God went, you know, was sort of like, okay, simmer down, cat, simmer down. Yeah, and you know, trying to get a word in. And then I just sort of like, I looked into this little pool, and there was a hermit crab. Now, I've only ever seen them, you know, you see the shell and you know there's a wee crab in there. But this little crab was walking along the floor of the rock pool. And there was just something in that moment of like, yeah, okay, so all of that stuff, you don't need to be worrying about that, kiddo. Just take a wee moment and watch this. And it was the most cool thing, you know, like, I know it sounds maybe really ridiculous, but in that moment, it was such a great reminder that there's a heck of a lot that's above my pay grade that I was never supposed to be worrying about. You know, it's not supposed to be me trying to control the world. And there's an awful lot of really cool stuff going on if I would only sit down, shut up, and pay attention.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot to be said to shut up and pay attention. I'm less religious, but I am quite spiritual. And so I kind of say, look, I get myself in trouble when I think I can do the universe's job better than it can do it. Like, that's normally when I get myself in a lot of trouble. When I'm like, step aside, let me get in the driving seat, I normally crash into something. It doesn't work very well.
Right.
So this idea of trusting and letting go, and in your context, it's very religious because, you know, that's your belief, which is beautiful. But for some people, it might be something slightly more spiritual in terms of just stepping back and allowing and being more present and watching the beauties of life and understanding that some things just happen. You know, the tree does not need you to stand over it in order to grow from a seed. It really doesn't. Like, you don't need to be involved in the process. And there are things in your life as well in which you don't need to be imposing yourself upon it for it to be so. It can just be so. Love it. So that's your first power tool. What would be the second one?
So my second one is sleep. Sleep is, sleep is underrated as a superpower. For me, I mean, I am a former queen of burnout, so I've learned the hard way. It could have been a lot easier to learn this lesson, but I've also always known that I'm rubbish without sleep. Like I cannot function. I am like a 2-year-old. I'm not even joking. Like, it's just like, a toddler when they get past themselves and they're just like, cannot function. The world's against me. It sucks. So really the world needs me to sleep. But having that weakness, that vulnerability physically has been an immense gift in going, no, you really need to understand this, which of course, we can't teach what we don't have, right? We can't give what we don't have. So the real blessing has been that I get the privilege, having learned it the hard way, of helping my clients do it an easier way, of prioritizing rest, prioritizing downtime. The idea, for some people, they go, oh, it's a religious, I have to close the shops. No, the idea of Sabbath, that you take a day off, and just get downtime, give your brain some rest, give your body some rest, do something joyous, for crying out loud. So that the sleep piece of it for me is fundamental. And the question I would have for people is, if you're not getting enough sleep, is to what end? What
I'm going to call that Dr. Kathrine's power question. Like, to what end, my darling? Yeah. To what end? I had a coach who used to say, Lovelda, even your phone needs recharging. I was like, I suppose you make a point. Like, everything needs a recharge.
That. Yeah, we would prioritize.
It's going to run out of energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Even your phone needs a recharge. And I think we're a bit more precious than our phones. So, we can't, the phone will function without us, but we will not function if we don't get any rest. So we do need to have that recharge moment. What would be your third power tool?
So my
power tool number 3
is, it's all about the people around me. So the people that, I've always felt incredibly blessed to have good counsel around me, and have always made a point of listening. And seeking.
I mean, that's a good point. Having great people and not listening to them is not called sensible. It's called a bit stupid.
Yeah, that's it. So for me, that, there's no such thing as self-made. I abhor that term. Like, if you want to, bring me out in a rash, that's a good way to, to do it.
That will be a rant for another day.
Yes, and I am here for that rant. You're not self-made. You grew up with whoever it was that fed you and clothed you and kept you safe to whatever level. You're still here, right? At some level, somewhere along the line, somebody gave you some hand up or hand out to get here. So even at its most simplistic level, it's not true. Your company is so important, but I will say that not just are you standing on the shoulders of the people that went before you and those who supported you to get to where you are. I would push this. And I know for some people, they think of company in that, oh, I've got to be, with people who are at the same level as me, people who are...
I only hang out with 6-figure business ladies, darling. Anything less than that? No, I don't hang out with people who hang out in that.
Myself. Yeah. Crap. Stop that. Right. There is so much, and that to me is one of the unexamined assumptions, right? That money equals expertise, that money equals value. No, it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, stop that. I don't believe that. Again, I could rant. That piece of who do you listen to? Whose voices do you privilege? Where are you being really ruthlessly honest with yourself? and seeking out people who will not just tell you what you want to hear, but people
what you need to hear.
Yes. You know, who will be ruthlessly honest with you, who has integrity, you know, who knows what they're talking about in that area, regardless of what they earn, you know, regardless of what age they are, regardless of their social media following, regardless any of that external, you know, popular BS that we have going around right now. None of that. You know, you're going to learn so much more sitting, listening to people who have been around the block a few more times than you. You know, I love sitting with older people. I love their wisdom and their life experience and, you know, their different perspectives because of the different generations that they've lived through. You know, I love that.
I love that because also it's back to the idea that we've been speaking about pretty much throughout this whole episode, which is question those assumptions,
Yes.
Question the assumptions about who actually adds value to your life. And I kind of say, when you see who somebody is, then when somebody shows you who they are, then trust it. And sometimes the best wisdom might come from a 5-year-old. Like, you just don't know.
It's so true.
You just don't know. So it's not age and it's not, but the more of that varied background that we can have around us, and the principle of it being people who are going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. And understand that when people come in your life, it's hard. It's not an accident, babe. They're here for a reason. Sometimes it's going to be a reason you like, and sometimes it's going to be a reason you learn from.
Exactly. And even at that, you know, even when it's people, and I do believe in keeping people in my world that I profoundly disagree with on, you know, even quite important issues.
Yeah.
Because they challenge me to think about what I believe and why I hold the stance I hold. And they also allow me to ask, what might I be missing? You know?
Oh, that's such a powerful question. What might I be missing? Dr. Kathrine, I'm not even going to lie, it's a lot. It's a lot. We're going to be reevaluating our lives, our souls, what we're here for, why we're here. What is it all about really anyway? No stone was left unturned, my darling. We're going to be reevaluating everything. They're going to be people who are listening to this and they are just having like light bulb moment after freaking light bulb moment. How does one get in touch with you? What's the best way of connecting with you?
Oh, come find me on my website. You know, find me on my website or Insta, like we connected. I love.
She likes to slide into your Insta DMs, by the way, ladies.
Yeah, yeah. Or, you know, feel free to slide into mine and have a real honest to God conversation. I'm more than happy to talk to people. So yeah, you can find me on social media. Find me on my website. Yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Fabulous. All the links, as always, my gorgeouses, are in the show notes. And Kathrine brought gifts. She came with presents. What you got? What you got? What'd you bring us? What'd you get?
So I have a free little mini ebook for you. It has more of my questions. So it is about faith and possibilities and new paradigms. And it's kind of a primer to start you thinking, even if you don't share my faith, you know, don't worry about that. It's about getting you to think in different ways about who you are and what you're here for. And yeah, so do get that. And the other thing is,
wonderful.
I have a mastermind.
And you've got a mastermind coming up as well, don't you?
I do. We start in January. It's 12 months.
Tell us about that.
I ask big questions, right? So we're doing it over 12 months because I'm going places that masterminds don't normally go. So I'm literally doing things like critical thinking, the self of the leader, you know, self of the coach, your accountability to power, you and your context, your values, the life you want to craft, and what does that look like to build a multi-generational legacy. You know, and how do you use your influence? We're covering a lot of ground. So obviously you need 12 months to do that. I'm super excited for it because I know that the women who come through, and we're only taking 10, we're already filling up. I was saying we don't even have the page. Well, the page is out now today. But you know, we didn't even have it any details out, and it was already filling up, which was weird and wonderful. But
it's because it's that good, my darling. That is why.
Yeah, no,
so if you're listening, yeah, if you're listening and it's really resonating and your mind has opened up, check out the ebook. And I really encourage you to check out the mastermind as well. Again, in the show notes, my gorgeous. Kathrine, we're there. We are there. We have to be there. We've covered so much. And because we've covered so much, if there was just one thing that you could leave people with, like one thought or one question that would be most empowering for people to be left with, having listened to all of this today, what would that one thing be?
Give yourself permission to question the assumptions that you're faced with. Give yourself permission to disagree with a guru, to carve a different path. You know, all the pioneering isn't done yet. So why not you?
Why not you? That is the best word to leave. That is the best phrase to leave today with. Why not you? We have come to the end of the show, my gorgeouses. It has been beautiful. Dr. Kathrine, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Until next time, ladies, do you be you. I'm going to keep saying it. Do you be you? And why not you? Why not now? You've been listening to The Lovelda Show, Women of Power podcast. Love you, my gorgeouses. Slide into my DMs. Go and check out @Lovelda Show. Until next time, love you, gorgeouses. Mwah! Ciao.